Hello and welcome to today's session. Today we'll be discussing the GS Paper 1 Week 11 test series. The first question was, explain the uprising of 1857. It's explain how the uprising of 1857 constitutes an important watershed in the evolution of the British policies towards the colonial India. Now again, when this we'll have a IBC, that is your intro, body and conclusion. But with that, that's not just enough. We also need to have a diagram. And this is what the diagram that I have done. In this, I have described where the some of the important places where the 1857 revolt took place: Delhi, Peshawar, Agra, Jhansi, Allahabad, etc. Bihar. You can also mark more points, but simply you need to first of all draw a diagram. This is number one. Number two, intro. In 1857, the revolt resulted in the termination of the East India Company rule. Simple. Again, in the body, what happens is that this marked a important watershed because what happened is that since that post 1857 revolt, the British adopted a policy of non-interference in the religious matter. Similarly, non-annexation of the princely states. Next, implementation of the divide and rule policy post 1857, because the British understood that the very reason the such a revolt of 1857 could occur, it was because of the Hindu Muslim unity. Next, last but not the least, it's the army. They started to increase the European in the British army. And further, the standard or the further the conditions of the Indian army or the Indians in the army were not were started to degrade because higher posts were no because the British become very suspicious of the Indians, and hence they avoided giving Indians in the higher posts. Now, remember that even with the IBC, you also need to draw a diagram. The diagram will fetch you a mark. Kindly practice drawing the India map and with such representation. Next, the Jagannath cult. See, similarly, again with the Jagannath cult, it's a 5 markers question. But I would again suggest that for a 5 markers question, just draw this diagram. See, this diagram is more than enough for you to remember the entire thing. Jagannath cult is an amalgamation of diverse religious cults like tribal religion, Brahminical Buddhism, Saivism, Shaktism, Tantrism, and Vaishnavism. This diagram itself, you can describe the first definition of the Jagannath cult. Next, the prevalent religious trend in Odisha assimilated in the cult of god Jagannath in due course of time. With the gradual march of time, all this religious sect mingled in the cult of Jagannath. You can simply say that the Jagannath cult with the time, comma, it led to the intermixing of all the religion that were prevalent in the Odisha. Next, every Hindu pantheon saw its gods or goddesses in him. Even today, Jagannath, the Lord of the universe, is honored and worshipped by the followers of different religious sect. Remember that one thing that we miss over here is also Islam. You also need to write over here that the Islam was also one of the features of the Jagannath culture. And if we remember that it was the Bhakta Salabega who was also a basically Muslim who was a devotee of Lord Jagannath. Next, with respect to the Patachitra. Now, Patachitra is basically a GI tagged painting exclusively made in Odisha. Now, the Patachitra has evolved from the Sanskrit word means potter, means canvas, and chitra means picture. Patachitra is done on canvas and is manifested by rich color and application, creative motifs and design, and portrays simple themes, mostly mythological depiction. Over here, this is an important point that you need to write, that some of the popular themes over which the Patachitras are based. Krishna Lila, about Lord Jagannath and his Lord Jagannath and his basically his about his deities, etc. Again, we have the Panchamukhi Ganesha, etc. Next, this was one of the important questions from the geography. Why are the world's fold mountain located along the margin of the continent? Bring out the association between the global distribution of the fold mountain, earthquake, and volcanoes. See, first of all, you need to make a diagram. Within the diagram itself, no, first of all, you have to make an intro. Within the intro, you have to write that the fold mountains, basically over here, that the fold mountains are basically located at the junction of the plate boundaries, and within that, fold mountains are located at the point where the tectonic plate boundary converge. You can draw this flowchart: mountains, plate collision; Himalaya, Eurasian and the Indo-Australian plate collision; Andes, it's formed because of the South American and the Nazca plate collision; Rockies formed due to the collision of the North American plate and the Pacific plate. After writing this, kindly draw a diagram showing this. See, how to draw a diagram of the world map has already been described in the video classes. I will attach the link with this video. Next, fold mountains are the region of the earthquake and volcanoes. Fold mountains are the region where the earthquake and volcanoes are frequent because of the plate movement. Volcanoes caused as the magma erupts from the asthenosphere. Example of the volcanic mountain is Mount Cotopaxi and Mount Whitney. Mount Cotopaxi is in Andes and Mount Whitney is in your Rockies. Mount Whitney in your North America and Cotopaxi in your South America. This can be important mapping location. Kindly look for them in the map, or you can simply look it into the Google map. Next, with respect to earthquake, again earthquake is nothing but the seismic movement caused due to the release of the pressure of the underlying rock. Now both earthquake and volcanoes are located where near the plate margin, or where the plates are colliding or the plates are diverging. Hence, it is because of the collision of the plates that we have the volcanoes and the earthquakes that are frequently associated with the fold mountain. Now within this, one thing you need to remember is that with respect to the Himalayas, we only have earthquake. We do not have volcanism anywhere in the Himalayas, because the plate at the point of the collision of the Indo-Eurasian as well as the or Indo-Australian, the plate is actually thick, and there is, as a result of which, there is absence of the magma chamber that is originating at the Himalayas. Next, disaster management in Odisha. See, before writing anything about the disaster management in Odisha, remember one thing is that you need to point out the major disaster that occurs in Odisha. The major disaster basically includes your cyclone, your flood, drought. It is not that the disaster like earthquake does not occur in Odisha. Yes, there is earthquake in Odisha. There are also other kinds of disaster in Odisha. But these are some of the important disaster, or the majority of the disaster that occurs every year. See, with respect to cyclone, first of all, what is the precaution? We have the Doppler radars which are located where? In your coast. Similarly, with respect to the infrastructure, we have the shelter homes. Similarly, for the rescue, we have the ODRAF. With respect to the flood, again, precautions include the IMD forecasting. Next, with respect to flood, again, the infrastructure is your natural leaves. Next, with respect to the drought, again, precaution is nothing but your IMD forecast. Now, most of you would be asking, what is this IMD forecast? IMD forecast is nothing but the Indian Meteorological Department forecast with respect to the monsoon. In case there is a forecast of a heavy rainfall, then there is a situation of flood. In case there is a deficient rainfall, then there would be a situation of drought. Again, with respect to the drought, what is the infrastructure? The infrastructure basically includes the PDS distribution network. Again, we have the insurance in case there is a failure of the crop. In the insurance itself, you can also write about the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, etc. But make it in points and make it quick and simple. But please kindly do not do this. You can write cyclone and you can write what are the precautionary measure. Again, you can write infrastructure. Again, you can write rescue. For the 5 markers question, kindly do not draw this flowchart. But in case you are having shortage of time and you're not able to write, then draw this flowchart. But if you have time, kindly go for point wise and do not draw this. This is only I have drawn to make you understand. Next is your Mahanadi river system and its impact on Odisha agriculture. See, this is also a 5 markers question, but I would suggest kindly draw this simple diagram. This is your Sionath from which your Mahanadi arises, and this is the Bay of Bengal where the mouth of the Mahanadi lies. Now, please remember that the rise of the Mahanadi is from the Sionath and not Amarkantak. Both Amarkantak and Sionath are located in Chhattisgarh, but Mahanadi rises from the Sionath and not Amarkantak. Next, the Mahanadi river system, origin Sionath, mouth Bay of Bengal. What is the impact on Odisha agriculture? Positive impact, formation of the alluvial soil, formation of the fertile deltaic soil at the mouth. Please add at the mouth. Next, We have the hydroelectric power generation used for the purpose of running water pumps. And next we have the irrigation facility that is being provided by your Mahanadi river. What is the negative impact? Again, we have the flood. Again, one of the problems of the Mahanadi is that it is a non-perennial river, or to say that ki Mahanadi is monsoonal dependent river. Hence, most of the time Mahanadi runs dry, especially during the time of your summer. Next, though the federal principle is dominant in our constitution and the principle is one of the basic features, but it is equally true that federalism under the Indian constitution leans in favor of a strong center, a feature that militates against the concept of the strong federalism. See, understand what is the meaning of federalism. Federalism means that there is both the existence of the center and the state government. This is the simple meaning of the federalism. And a strong center means it's nothing but a unitary government. In this context, first of all, federalism under the Indian constitution leans favorably in favor of a strong center. How? Appointment of the governor by the center, the presidential rule, emergency provision. Other legislations, this is very very important, kindly mark these points, like the recent Disaster Management Act. See, recently what happened was that the COVID pandemic struck India, as a result of which what happened, the central government enacted the Disaster Management Act. What happened with this Disaster Management Act? The Disaster Management Act, as a result of which it made that centers issued guidelines were mandatory on the state government to follow. That is, the state cannot follow guidelines beyond the guidelines that has been issued by the center, and the state is bound to follow the guidelines issued by the center. So what actually happened? Was that the decentralization was highly compromised. Number one. Number two, what happened? States power of decision making was highly limited. And number three, what happened? That states could not handle the situation on their very own way. So this what happened is that so basically what happens is that this is nothing but, though though India though India completely depends upon a strong center, but at the end of the day, it is the federalism that gets highly compromised. And these are the points of which you can highlight. Remember, one thing is that federalism also got compromised during the 1976 emergency period. This was also the time during which the federalism got compromised. Similarly, federalism is also compromised when unnecessarily presidential rule have been implemented in the states. One of the examples was the last year in 2016, I hope. Yes, it was in 2017 when the presidential rule was imposed upon the Uttarakhand without a proper consent of the legislature or without a proper voting within the legislature. Hence, the Supreme Court completely struck down that presidential rule as unethical and null and void, as it contradicts the constitution of India. Next, the local self-government system in India has not proved to be an effective instrument in governance. See, remember that whenever it comes to the local whenever it comes to critically analyzing the local governance, please remember that you need to always highlight these 3 points, or I call it as the 3F. What is this 3F? Fund. First of all, every local government institution, be it the panchayat or municipality, they basically lack fund. Next is your function. What is the function? See, as per the 11th schedule of the Indian constitution, it says that there are 29 matters with respect to your panchayats and 18 matters with respect to your municipality. And how the matters would be devolved to the panchayat or municipality, it will be determined by the respective state government. It means that it is up to the state government that it will decide what powers are to be executed by the municipality or the panchayat. Now, in this context, remember that if the state government doesn't devolve any power or function, then the power and the function is basically concentrated with the state government or with the bureaucrats. As a result of which, what happens is that they do not have enough power to work as a decentralized government. And last but not least, again, what happens is that over here the corruption breeds. Next is that innovation is not accepted because the bureaucracy follows the law of the land. But on the other hand, In the decentralized government, the people have actually the capacity to frame their own law. Recently, you must have seen that in the COVID pandemic, what happened was that the Odisha government gave the power to the sarpanch, or the collector gave the power to the sarpanch to declare any area as a containment zone in case there are more number of COVID patients that are being in case there is more number of COVID patients that are coming out from a particular region. Now, this was exclusively implemented in the Ganjam district, as a result of which they were able to significantly control the corona spread by declaring the containment zone. And what it actually happened was that it reduced the burden upon the central administration or upon the district headquarters. Now, this is basically how it helps in the decentralized function. Second is that the functionary. Now, what is the functionary? Now, remember that most of you will be appointed as the BDO, most of you will be appointed as the local fund audit officers. Now, the BDO, they implement the work at the intermediate level. In the intermediate level, what happens is that the BDO is your executive officer. As a result of which, what happens is that the public is highly dependent upon the BDO, or I would say that the people's representatives are dependent upon the BDO to execute their work. So basically, in case if the BDO, what happens is that as a result of which multiple laws come into this context, and which is basically not able to, this Gram Panchayat people, they are not able to understand this laws. They basically depend upon the BDO to interpret them and execute the work. So what happens is that, first of all, they do not have manpower. Number two, bureaucratization of the local government. Number three, lack of technical members to conduct the social audit. Remember that in the Manrega we have a scheme of social audit, but people do not know what is audit itself. So what is a social audit even is not known to the people. Who will do the social audit? They do not know. Do they have the technical capacity to conduct the social audit? That is another bigger problem. Next, the performance of the welfare scheme that are implemented for the vulnerable section is not effective due to absence of the awareness and active involvement at all stages of the policy process. See, the question has exclusively two parts, part 1 and part 2. We need to describe each part effectively. First of all is the absence of awareness leads to the low literacy rate, unable to understand the scheme. Next, non-propagation of the scheme in the vernacular language. Next, absence of the active involvement, dependency on the representatives, absence of the adequate knowledge, lack of technical know-how. Example, people rarely know about the social audit in the Manrega. It's that simple. Next, define LGBT. See, most of you already know the LGBT, no issues with that. But what are the measures that are being taken by the government to diminish the prejudice and discrimination against the LGBT community? Next, measures taken by the government. First of all is your legal measures. The first and foremost legal measure was with respect to the Navtej Singh Johar case. In the Navtej Singh case, what happened was that Supreme Court decriminalized section 1377 of the IPC, of the Indian Penal Code, which prior to that, section 377 of the IPC, what it does was that it criminalized homosexuality. So in the Navtej Singh Johar case, it decriminalized homosexuality. Next, what happened in the Nalsa case? The Nalsa case of 2014, what happened was that Supreme Court recognized that the LGBT people are a third gender. This became important because as per the gender we know we have only male and female, but we do not consider the LGBT. So LGBT in the Nalsa case, they were defined as the third gender. Please remember that whenever you are writing an essay with respect to the gender issue, you always need to include the LGBT. That will give you more marks because the examiner will know that this person has a wider view. And as an aspiring civil servant, you must be also sensitive towards the need of the LGBT community. Next, with respect to the economic measures, we have job reservation, educational scholarship. Next, with respect to the gender sensitization program, what is this gender sensitization program? Gender sensitization program means that the government is basically trying to make people aware about who the LGBT are. They're trying to make aware of the people about the LGBT, their sexual preferences, etc. Because people, they are homophobic, means they do not like homosexual people, and that is something, again, means that is something, it's somewhat it's a violation of the human right. And in that context, the Ministry of the Health and Family Welfare had released recently the Satya scheme. The Satya scheme not just makes people aware about the LGBT community, but it also makes people aware about the teenage pregnancy, abortion, etc. And this scheme is to majorly to educate the adolescent people. So the Satya scheme is basically projecting that is basically educating the youth to bring a change. Next, the multiplicity of the various commissions for the vulnerable section of the society often of the society leads to the problems of overlapping of jurisdiction and duplication of the function. Is it better to merge all commission in an umbrella human rights commission? Argue your case. See, this is a opinion based question. I have formed the opinion. See, first of all, my opinion in favor of the opinion, I have given two examples for you to basically understand. Consider a disabled woman. Now, for a disabled woman, schemes would be implemented by Ministry of the Women and the Child Development as she is a woman, and schemes will also be implemented by Ministry of the Social Justice because she is the disabled. Now, what happens is that the multiplicity of the scheme, they do not know the as a result of that it creates a confusion. They do not know whom to approach, how to approach, and what to do about it. This remains a basic issue. Next, simple is that similarly, let us see that in case there are atrocities against the scheduled caste or a scheduled tribe, so who will take up the case? The case would be taken up by National Commission of Scheduled Caste or National Commission of Scheduled Tribe. Secondly, the case can also be taken up by the NHRC or the National Human Rights Commission. Again, the case will be taken up by the police. Again, the case will be taken up by the judiciary. Who will provide the justice remains a question. And how will they provide the justice? That remains a question. So what happens is that within this, that they all work separately, and hardly there is a incidence that they work in a coordinating fashion. I would say the police and judiciary will work in a coordinating fashion, but not this two organization. So what happens is that there is duplication of the schemes and overlapping of the jurisdiction. So in case if we are having a single umbrella organization which could provide help to all the vulnerable sections of the society, that could be better, that could be more coordinated. Or if I'm moving in against, I would say is that multiplicity of the schemes, as a result of which what happens is that people will be more beneficial than having a single human rights commission, because in the multiplicity of the schemes, people can have multiple schemes, they can benefit from the multiple schemes. But and on that basis, what you can say is that you can say that yes, that then you can say that hence we should not have an umbrella organization, rather the different organization should exist. But I would say that stick to this point, because this is the point where you can explain more rather than this point. So in that, I would again, in the opinion based question, remember that you need to write an intro, you need to write a body, and then you need to write a conclusion. In the conclusion, you have to give your exclusive opinion with respect to it. In your opinion, how do you write your opinion? In my opinion, we should have a single umbrella body, or you can write, in my opinion, we should not have a single umbrella body. Simple. Next, the integrity index on Transparency International, India stands very low. Discuss briefly the legal, political, economic, social, and cultural factors that have caused the decline in the public morality in India. See, the integrity index or the integrity index of the Transparency International is basically a basically the Transparency International is a German based company. So basically it brings out the report on the corruption level at various countries. Now let us understand why the corruption level exists in India. First of all, from the legal point of view, you see that Several layers of protection ensured by the government servant. Remember this. Once you are in the government service, then you have several layer of protection, cushion after cushion, to protect you. Means even if you are doing a corruption, then it's not easy to remove you. Simple. Next, political. Usage of money and muscle power to win the election. This is the root of corruption. Remember this. Next, economic. It's your crony capitalism. What is this crony capitalism? Let us understand. Let us say that ki Reliance Reliance has very close relationship with the prime minister. And what happens is that then the prime minister favors Reliance, as he is dependent upon the Reliance for much of the things. And as a result of which, whatever contracts or whatever schemes are being given by the Reliance are completely given to the Reliance itself. For example, a big highway contract is given to Reliance. Again, we have a social economic projects. Again, it is given to Reliance. So what happens is that there is crony capitalism. That is the absence of free market. It means that ki government will give favor to those capitalists from whom they have the benefits. Next, in case of the social case, see, in our society, corruption. If you see that that particular person is taking money or is taking bribe, people will say that ki how much he is taking. Oh, he's taking 2 lakhs, means very rich. No one will say that ki, oh no, he's taking money, that's something wrong and we should expose him. No one will say about that. Oh, he's taking money, let him take his money. Means socially we have accepted that corruption is the part of the society, and socially we do not discourage corruption at a very extended level. So that is the basic social problem. Next comes to the cultural problem. Cultural problem is the habit of offering bribe. Let me give you this example. Recently a news came that in the GST there are refunds that are being given. What is the refund in the GST? See, supposingly you have exported 100 rupees of items to USA. Government will say that since you have exported 100 rupees of items for which you paid 20 rupees custom duty, I will return you this 20 rupees. And who will refund this 20 rupees? This 20 rupees would be refunded by a head commissioner or a level of the commissioner or a deputy commissioner rank in the GST level. Now, deputy commissioner rank, he would say that give me certain percentage and I will refund you the GST. These things happen. This was also very much prevalent in the Gujarat, especially in the central government services, also somewhere in the state government services. Now, what happened is that though the GST says that there are several that GST is completely made transparent, but still then what people do is that people have an habit of offering the people bribe. They say that yes, oh, sir, you have passed it, sir, please give this as a reward. Now, why should people reward them? They are doing their duty. They are being paid by the government of India to do their duty. But when people start rewarding them, that becomes a problem. Hence, as a result of which, recently the government has also made that if a person is giving bribe, he's also responsible in the act of corruption. So this is the basic thing that you need to highlight from the legal, political, economic, social, and the cultural point of view. My last message to the student is that in case a question is given, please do not leave a blank of it. At least write something about it. Rather than writing nothing, please write something about it, because 1 mark is also very important. 1 mark can also be the determiner that whether you would be into the service or you would be out of the service. So please be careful and please remember that. Thank you. That will be all.